And we are back to another episode of The Real Podcast of Dallas. Yes, it's The Real Podcast of Dallas. Yes, another episode, a special episode. Yes, we are back. It's been a while. I want to say hello to Cindy, Maria. Hope to get you here soon. A summer break. So how can you listen to The Real Podcast of Dallas? Well, you can catch us on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Facebook. We're everywhere. Thank you to those who keep listening to us in Dallas, Texas. I'm still in the Area 51 and a half. Hopefully I'll come home soon. I want to say, miss you, Cindy, miss you, Maria. We'll get back on track soon. And again, if you want to listen to The Real Podcast of Dallas, share it with your friends. Share it with your family. It's a mental health podcast. That's edutainment with music. This is our 85th episode. Catch up on the episodes. Past episodes.
Is that too much?
Yes, is that too much?
Give me just a little smile.
Yes. This is Laid Back.
We got a message for you.
Our Sunshine Reggae theme. Thank you, Tomas, for the idea. My son Tomas came up with that. Thank you so much. So we have a special show for you guys today. Yes. I'm going to go a little bit deep today. We're going to talk today about families and addictions. Yes, addiction. But before that, are you having fun? Are you having a good summer? Are you meeting your goals? Are you reaching your goals? Are you setting goals? How's life treating you? Are you lonely? We're still here. Grinder Middle School, how are you? Thomas Jefferson, how are you? Love Field, Dallas, Texas, how are you? I hope you're well in this show. A lot of good people out in Dallas, Texas. Story Road Lane neighborhood, how are you? Web Chapel, are you doing well? How are things there? Well, I hope this keeps you company. So we have an interesting episode today. One that I've been wanting to cover for a little while. Yes. And it's addiction and recovery. But a different point of view. The point of view of the family. How does it affect the family? Many of you that I've worked with in the past, many of you who have listened to this program have picked up a little bit that we do talk about mental health and addiction and recovery. Times are a little hard, so it's a good topic to share with you guys. Maybe we'll give you a little bit of insight on how to cope with somebody that's dealing with addiction in your family. How do you cope with it? Do you yell at them? Do you give them an ultimatum? What do you do? What do you do when someone in your family has an addiction and maybe they don't want to change? What's my role? What should I do? What do I need to do? If someone has an addiction in my family, how should I deal with it? Do I deal with it? I want to start off by saying that if you do have someone in your family and there is addiction, I want to start off by saying it's not your fault. You didn't cause it. It's not your responsibility. So what does that mean? What does it mean? What does it mean that somebody has addiction, has an addiction? It's hurting me. I'm trying to behave so that they're not using. I'm trying to do good so they're not using. I'm trying to do better in school. Or maybe I'm not doing better in school. Maybe I'm acting out so that maybe they'll realize, hey, there's a problem. Well, that's what I mean. It's not your fault. You're trying to solve a problem that's very big. Counselors have a hard time trying to figure this out. But is it hopeless? No, not hopeless. It's how we react to it. It's how we react to someone who has an addiction. Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you just sick and tired? Most of us are sick and tired. You get to a point where you get really sick and tired. And if you have an addiction and if you're listening to this broadcast, if you listen to this podcast, I'm going to give you an idea of what it's like to live with somebody who has an addiction so that maybe you have a little bit of empathy. What's difficult about living with somebody with an addiction is that it's very unpredictable. It's very unpredictable. One is when we find out that our family member has an addiction, it's a shocker. Yes, it's a shocker. Some of you may think that have an addiction and you're in a family or in a relationship, may think, well, they should have known. They should have picked up the signs. But a lot of us don't know. A lot of us in a family dynamic, we don't realize that there's an addiction. Or maybe we know that there's use or misuse of drugs and alcohol. We just don't know how deep that is because maybe you've shown that you have it under control. Maybe you do go to work every day. Maybe you're a provider. Maybe you go to school. Maybe you're doing things that everybody else does. You just have a substance abuse issue. So how do we know it's a problem? Well, point of view of the family member, we start seeing you distance yourself more. You promise things and don't keep a promise. Maybe you lose money. Your responsibilities, you negate your responsibilities. Maybe you're not going to work anymore. Maybe you're not participating with the family anymore. See, those are things that affect the family. Those are things that we start looking at and we start getting scared. It scares us. It scares us because maybe you were involved a lot with the family. Maybe we depend on you and now we can't depend on you. Maybe you're abandoned me emotionally. Maybe I need you and you haven't been there. Just like you feel that distance, when you're in your addiction. You want to be left alone. But we don't want to be left alone. So it's a give and take relationship that now is only one-sided. Maybe you're in a relationship and your other half maybe started in the relationship with you drinking, and now they want you to stop drinking. Well, what's the problem? You accepted me for who I was and what I did, and now you want me to change. Sometimes with addiction, you don't see how deep the hurt is or what your words are saying. Sometimes when you're in addiction, the way you look at people, the way you put the addiction first hurts. So how does it affect kids? It affects them because they want a normal life. Oh, but what is normal? What do you mean? What's normal? Well, maybe normal is that they just want some attention. They want you to be present. When you're in an addiction, when you're using, you're not present emotionally. You may be there physically. You may even go participate with your children in their sports, their school activities. But if you're a substance abuser, probably won't be there emotionally. They'll be emotionally detached. Because I've had families that I've worked with where they're very active, but they're emotionally detached, meaning that they're not present emotionally. They may be there physically, but the emotional, good job, the presence. Maybe you don't accept your kids' emotions because their emotions maybe trigger you. And your kids can pick up on that, or your other half can pick up on that. I call it walking on eggshells. So they start walking on eggshells. They start being afraid to react because you may drink more. If they make a mistake, you're critical. Or they become critical of you, and everything's an argument. So we develop a unhealthy, a not normal environment. Normal environment should be peaceful in the home. Should be great communication. Shouldn't be afraid to tell people how you feel. Kids should be able to tell their parents how they really feel, even if it hurts the parents' feelings. If it hurts your feelings, parents, you need to work on that because they're just exploring. They're just saying what's on their mind. Now, I'm not talking about hateful rhetoric. When it gets to that point, especially with addiction, then you have to have professional help because you're breaking that communication down. So a lot of you that are dealing with somebody who is in recovery or not in recovery, you may experience that. Some of you may think that just because they're in recovery, things are going to get better. They may not. They may get worse before they get better. Some of us get so involved in people's recovery that we work harder than they do. If you're working harder than the person in recovery, step back. If you care about the recovery more than they do, step back. You're getting too involved and it's going to hurt you. If you're a teen or preteen and you're listening to this, one of the biggest advice I can give you is be yourself. Get some help. Get some help so you can learn who you are. Get some help so you can deal with the shame of your family member's addiction. Now, some of you may say, well, I'm not ashamed about it. Well, there's a deep shame that goes into it. Especially when you're having to do a lot for your parent. Some of you may find yourself working very hard, taking care of your brothers and sisters, working harder in school, worried about the bills. Those are things that kids shouldn't have to go through. And if you're going through that, ask for help. If you're a person in a relationship where you're emotionally trapped, because it can be emotionally draining when you're with somebody who has an addiction. It can be very manipulative. They can manipulate you. That it's your fault. Every time you bring the topic of them minimizing their drinking or not drinking, then they manipulate it. And if you wouldn't get me so angry, and if you would just behave, or why don't you just mind your own business? That anger, you may want to avoid it so you don't deal with the topic anymore. So what do? You get some help. Get some help. Don't be ashamed. It's not your fault. You didn't cause it and you can't fix it. A lot of people make that mistake where they try to fix it. You can't fix it. You gotta like yourself a little more. This is when I say, you gotta like yourself. You gotta like yourself, especially when you're in a relationship. Because if you're in a relationship and there's abuse like that, you gotta know, hey, when to step back. If you're a family member and you're dealing with a brother and sister, and you're dealing with a relative and they're abusing you emotionally, it's time to step back. It's time to like yourself a little more and set some boundaries. Listen to our episode on boundaries on the Real Podcast of Dallas. All of these episodes that we have a theme, a mental health theme, because this is the only podcast in the world that's dedicated to a drug-free